The Sunshine Coast Spinners and Weavers Guild invite you into a world of fiber, a traditional craft manipulating natural resources including wool, down, flax, cotton, and silk. Call it fiber arts or domestic arts. The aim is to create something unique and special, giving satisfaction to the artist and the receiver. From knitting to computerized looms, Fiber Arts offers many disciplines at various skill levels. The Guild providing a center for knowledge, guidance, and standards. In this 25th anniversary year, the members share their passion for a handmade life.
You meet people with different ideas, you get to know different, you learn different techniques, they organize workshops. Generally it was a good place to be, to learn new techniques and go to different workshops.
I think I've always had some connection with fibres. My first memory was as a child learning to knit at school, where I had a red ball of wool and some knitting needles, and they showed us how to knit. And I did this square, which ended up with more holes in it than knitting, but it must have been quite important for me, because I remember it now whenever I think of those things. And my mother's family were quite creative, and they did sewing and embroidery and tapestry, so it was always there in some form.
The Guild, the problem with anything that is new, weaving when I started at was basically new. It was coming back to its own again, and it was becoming popular. People were starting to weave, and then you start to develop better and better techniques or newer techniques. And sometimes I think we forget that there are newcomers at the Guild, and there needs to be more attention paid to what their needs are, and I think that would be a good thing for the Guild. And I think that's happening.
Yes.
I think with the spinning it's happening, and hopefully it will with the weaving, which is it's a more expensive way of doing things, so it might be harder for some people. Wool's more expensive, the equipment's more expensive, and it's hard if you haven't got a reasonable size room to put your loom in. It's not easy. So all these things stop people from maybe doing weaving if they possibly could. Spinning and knitting is so much easier. You see, there was hardly any knitting when I first joined the Guild. It was spinning and weaving, And now knitting has become very popular, more so than any other of these crafts, I think.
Tremendously. I mean, they taught me everything that I know, basically. I came with a wheel and no fiber.
Yeah.
And they taught me how to use it and how to spin.
It took me a while to find the guild, but once I did, I found I learned so much. I've always had an interest in fiber arts, haven't had the time to pursue it, but with the guild, I felt as though I had all of this inspiration and knowledge, and it's been a wonderful community for me.
And it's been stimulating. I love the show and tell where people come in with their projects. It sort of starts you off in another direction. Yeah, it's also been a social thing for me, because I didn't know anyone over here when I came over here. The only person I knew was Jean-Pierre. So, and because I wasn't working, it's not as easy to meet people. So that was a really good and interesting place. I sort of felt like it belonged in there, like, get in there like a dirty shirt and belt or weave or whatever you want to do.
Memories of the early days of spinning and weaving on the Sunshine Coast are recalled in this community television program from 1993.
I mentioned that Mrs. Reeves, who came to the Sunshine Coast in 1914 with her husband as a bride, she became very interested in spinning her own wool when she discovered that it was 8 cents a pound to import her yarn from Britain. And she tried to learn to spin from books that she borrowed from the Open Shelf Library in Victoria, which was open to all people in rural areas. But you can't really learn to spin from a book. You have to have someone show you, and she realized that very early on. And her husband found a seashell band lady that was willing to teach his wife to spin for $1. And that's how she learned to spin. And then her 13-year-old son built her an Indian head spinner like we noticed that Barbie was using, and he mounted it on her treadle sewing machine. So she was definitely spinning, I would say probably as early as 1930. The last interview I remember reading about was in 1956, and at that point she had progressed onto weaving, and she was knitting, and she clothed her whole family in garments that she produced from her hand-spun yarn, whether it was knit or woven.
One thing I found interesting was that there wasn't really a tradition of weaving here on the coast. There was spinning, but women didn't weave. It was more on the East Coast. And when they came out here, they knitted.
Yes, there was a lot more knitting done here than weaving. Our heritage here in weaving is not very extensive, but we have this guild here who are wonderful weavers, so we're doing our best.
The technique of carding wool and blending colors is demonstrated at an early guild meeting.
Most weavers at this point would wash this fleece because it's easier to work with once it's washed. You see, it's moving quite rapidly, and it sure takes the work and slavery out of carding. You'll see later on. Yes, and the electric carder, or the carding machine, is excellent for blending colors because it leaves her both hands free, and she can keep feeding it in a process, but rather than put the hand carders down and then load them up again. So it's very quick. Now she's straightening the fibers, as you can see. Now she's making what we call a roll leg. It's a nice little roll, like a curl that comes off. It's fluffy and all full of air, and all those fibers are in a curl that she will then spin with. And the fibers peel off the ends of these little roll legs so easily. They just come right out just beautifully. And because she's got so much air in it, it'll be quite easy to spin, and she won't get a lot of lumps and things in her spinning.
The Sunshine Coast Spinners and Weavers Guild has had a tradition of a monthly meeting, usually held on the first Monday. In the early years, a member's home in Gibsons was the center of this activity. Today, with almost 60 registered artists, the Guild is in residence at the Davis Bay Church in Sechelt. The Guild's extensive library is housed here with plenty of room for equipment demonstrations. The meetings are always lively with discussions of new traditions, techniques, and trends. The business of the Guild is also part of the monthly agenda, from planning craft shows and Christmas sales to discussions on how to keep the Guild and the craft they practice alive in this coastal community. In this early spring meeting, the topics range from aprons to yarn bombing and plans for the Guild's open house in June.
We have a copy here if anybody wants to look at it, but anybody can also get it online by just going onto the Sunshine Coast Arts Council website, and then it will take
4 till 8, and J.C. Boggs will make her presentation at that time, or are we going to divide it up into an opening for the members, then for the public, then for J.C. Boggs?
And the donation cups for people to drop a bit of money into it.
yes.
That's the way I think we should go. I don't think we should bother about liquor licenses or serving wine. We get enough of that in other places.
Help with that. So the tomorrow at 2 at the store about yarn bombing, and the 20th of April at the forest to do the installation. We have a ton of knitted stuff in the store, and it's really amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
And I went into Wren's the other day, and they're the local folks that have our logo. And it's quite a difference in price if we can get a group of 12.
It's not square at all. And if I try to square it up, it's I just don't know whether I can try to square it up. So I can't lay it like that. I have to put it on like this. Whatever I put it on has to be able to do that. If anybody has any suggestions, but anyway, it was very interesting.
This is a section from a tomato. No, it isn't. It's a tomato cake. But a lampshade works really well too. I do have a lampshade one. Diane took it home with her, and then my buddy cut these out of a piece of what is this called, masonite or something. But anything firm and stiff, I do. Even just a heavy cardboard. But I started my Kumi Himmel people off with the discs. You can buy these discs. I have actually several that I maybe could sell if anybody's interested. And I got them all bobbins, plastic bobbins, which make a nice battle. And I discovered from one of the books I bought how to make rickrack. This particular piece of rickrack is all curly because I discovered that the tension on the disc, I was drawing it tighter than I would if I was using the table, so that it wanted to go all curly. And I thought, well, fine, all right, you want to be curly. So I made a flower on the end of this one, and
these are done on a mercerized cotton warp with a mercerized cotton tabby weft, and this one is commercial Noil silk, and this one is some hand-spun, hand-dyed Noil silk, and they're done on an overshot threading, trying to get variations from a fork harness overshot threading.
Number 1 was all done 2 years ago. I took it off the loom, I washed it, I hung it up to dry on the shower rod, and I saw a threading error. I was just furious. After all that work, I was just furious. So this is where it is. It just jumps right out at me. It's in the yellow. I'll let you pick it out. But that has been bugging me for 2 years. Finally, I cut it off. What I did was I tied on ends. I tried to make the warp longer. I didn't have enough warp because, of course, I started over again. I was just so disappointed with it. So
I don't know, she might get a pillowcase or something out of it. It's shorter. She has the blanket with the error, and that's just the way it is, and I just have to move on.
So this was the first dye bath, and then I of course couldn't waste any of it, so this was the second. Gets progressively lighter, and then finally very light, and I couldn't throw the dye bath away, so this was some commercial wool I just stuck in the pot, or stuck in the bucket, and left it outside. It froze in the water for a couple of months, and so that's the cold method of dyeing.
Well, first of all, I saw on YouTube or somewhere, and it was to say, coat your drum harder with a color, and I had navy blue. And then I added some more colors, and then I had just little pieces of silk, and I didn't use any cloth or anything, but just little things like this. And it looked really, really lush when I took it off because of all these colors. But when I'm spinning it, those colors were disappearing around inside the blue, which I was a little disappointed. So I did another couple, and I realized at that point, so I started tearing off the dark navy blue that I had done. So it was probably this latter area that I did. And I had more of the colors and the silk and the little extra colors showing in it. So it was really an experiment. But I think I'll get some big fat needles like a number 14 and knit it up. Or see what I get.
Going. And if you, by chance, you kind of forget about the bottom because you can't see it. And on the top I do one and then the other one back, whatever it was. And I kept doing this. And I would do that a couple of times, and I didn't realize until I moved forward that I had missed. So I had gaps here, because when you beat, you can't do it far enough because the other one has progressed. And I had several, and I thought, oh, maybe I can just, after pulling it out time and time again, I finally just kept going. And I was able, after it, just with a pin, just going along. You shouldn't tell us all those Then other thing about making sure you don't tangle them, because otherwise you've got your edges joined. So that's another thing to watch out for. I really finally sat down to do it. It had been sitting on the loom because I needed that loom for the napkin exchange. So I had to finish the scarf, and it worked out with Barbie's program as well, because this was from the year before one, Weaving in the Maiwa tradition that Jane gave at Maiwa. And and I thought, well, I'll try it. But it's if you want a challenge, double weave.
I still am learning about things, and I didn't know how to do it at all. So I went to Jessica Casey's co-sailing weaving, and I wanted to know why you weren't there. Good. So this is a result of my weaving. It's twill. I know what that is. Yeah. And it's traditional colors. And normally, when someone made a shawl like this, they would also have a long fringe about this long hanging from one side, so that when they danced and they held it up like this, that the fringe would fly around them as they were dancing. So this is made 12,000-year-old technology for this coast here. And with very trepidation, I brought it to show you.
Asking about what can you do with just a small amount, and in here they suggest that if you really love a skein of yarn, to wear it as a towel.
The sharing of workshop experiences is a tradition of the Guild. In this monthly meeting, Barbie Paulus shares her memories of the Maiwa Textile Symposium and the weaving of the delectable sari.
But it's absolutely gorgeous. It's in bamboo. It's joined up here. It's double weave. She says she'll never do it again. but it's actually all different shades.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, you can have one here, you can do an awful lot with it. So you can, there was a lot of yarn. I mean, it's quite wide for me for a scarf, but then with the elastic, but it's still very, very lightweight. Her interpretation for us to play with. This was on my loom, so I got to do a bigger sample, and you can see the airiness of that. This actually is a mix of silk and cotton in the warp and in the weft. And also, see the little sparkles? Yeah. There's this wonderful yarn that you can buy, and it's quite fine, and it's got tiny little sequins.
Guest speakers are another highlight of the monthly Guild meeting. Today, Rebecca Fisher discusses the finer points of a 2-week millinery course available through the costume program at Capilano College.
So, and this is with, this is a little test piece of felt before I did that shawl. And so I found the two kind of go together with the, I'm a little bit worried with the felt, but I don't want to make it look like a brain tumor, with the texture. But I think if handled properly, it can look a little less brain-like. But anyway, so that is my latest class. This is another part of the millinery program that I took. And I am totally in love with this. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We had to make a helmet, and I thought, oh my God, I don't do helmets, And I had an antler. I had one antler, and I thought, okay, and they're making all these wild things like, from Lord of the Rings, and I'm going, oh my God, I have to make a helmet, And so I thought, okay, we're going to keep it simple and work with this antler. So this is my rendition of, I don't know, an antler warrior or something. But I would be perfectly happy to make helmets for the rest of my life. I thought this would be a fluff project. It ended up being so much fun. I want to gold leaf the entire world. So this is where my work has ended up. And the Capilano College program has really made a difference, and getting Janet's bursary was a bit of a freak out, because Mary Lou, who's the head of the program, said to me, I want you to go quickly run down to the registrar's office and apply for this scholarship. And I said, okay. And she says, you might even know this woman. She said, do you know Janet Collins? I thought, oh my God. So I ran down, filled out the thing, and I left Janet, I phoned Janet and left a message, and I said, I just applied for your scholarship.
Deanna Pilling talks with longtime Guild member Anne Gregory about color, texture, her computerized loom, and the importance of keeping records of your work.
Things that I've heard to become a really good weaver is keep impeccable records. Keep a record of how you planned it out, what colors you chose, and this is what Anne has here from her work with the computer-assisted loom. She's done her drawdown, she's put in her colors, she's selected the color and the fiber that she's going to use, and you'll see that how the colors are an important part of the additional design feature, is what yarns to use. And I've seen a couple of these pieces finished, and they're really beautiful. And she has kept impeccable records of the works that she's designed and woven, and the colors that she's chosen to use.
It's easy to keep records because you put it on the computer. So you don't have to put a lot of your own work in. You print it out, put it in the book, and you add the colours to it.
So that
it's not that complicated. Whereas if I was doing it by hand, I would not
do this.
Have the records that I have.
So if somebody liked your scarf, this was done as block twill, and if somebody liked that, you did this as a scarf and they wanted 20 of them, you just go back to these records or the computer program, you have that stored, you plug that in and away you go.
Right.
So this is what you would do for production weaving.
If I was a production weaver.
If you were a production weaver.
Yeah. The thing about this is you can come to an area and say, well, I want to change the patterning.
Yes, and so you get this lovely bordering through it.
So you get to change the bordering, yeah.
This is amazing. There's hope for me yet, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to sit down and learn the basics with a graph chart and a pencil and a big eraser to understand it.
Well, I so disagree with you on that. I so think that it's so easy to put these in.
Yes.
Straight draw down.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is put that in using your computer, as you've seen me.
Yes.
And then the place where you do your design is here with your tie-up, and you can pick a weave from a book, or you can do your own.
You weave structure from the books, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can say, well, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I will do. This represents plain weave, so you do it there, and then you start to bring it all in, and then you just want these blocks in.
Mm-hmm.
So you put that in there, and then it really, I would not have done the weaving I do if I hadn't had a computer.
Is that right? Yeah, and it's challenged you and it keeps you sharp, and this is amazing. There's hope for me yet. And I know that you have commenced this program with City and Guilds out of London, England, which is this wonderful body of work that takes you from pre-planning in your journal and photography, printing, and all of that leads you onto this art quilt making. And I think at this point I'm very envious of you being able to tackle these, because the learning process here is great with your photography, your mix with color, your use of color, and how these pieces of work have come to be. And I would like you to show us what the culmination of all this pre-planning has done, because journaling is such an important way to expand as a fiber artist, and obviously that's what you're doing here.
Okay, the program starts with just collecting objects of interest and photographing them, and then trying to repeat their colors using paint or acrylic paint. And so you go through the whole process of learning how to use color, how to recognize the different tones and shades of color, painting pieces, doing things that are ugly, things that aren't, and generally just learning how to use paper and pen and learn about colors, their blues, how you put them so they look reasonable. And then you take all the colors out and just put one piece of color in. You cut something out and put something else in. So it's all getting your mind to work and use it to look at things a bit differently and more openly. This is a visit to the museum in Gibson's. These are just leaves I painted round, cutouts from Gibson's, things you shouldn't look at because they're lousy, and so on. So you start, basically I'm starting to learn about design and what works and what doesn't. And most of these don't. But it begins to come together.
Tonight, we begin to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Sunshine Coast Spinners and Weavers Guild. I'm privileged to stand here as the current president, but the room is full of presidents who have gone before me and long-standing members who've shaped and built the guild over time. The skills and creative talents of our members in spinning and dyeing are very evident in the display at the back, and I'm sure that everybody has had a chance to look at
some of the wonderful things that are around us here. And this is just the beginning. Our guild is more than just another club to which we pay our yearly dues. It's a family. We spend a lot of time together at workshops, informal spin-ins, on trips and holidays, during special events, as well as at meetings. We know each other well. Many of our partners and significant others know each other too. They share a bond in knowing that there is migratory fluff behind the couch, stashed under the bed and in the attic, chic signs in the garage, and equipment everywhere. We inspire each other, learn from each other, and support each other through good times and bad. 2 years ago, we lost a member, Laurie Jensen, under tragic circumstances. Her partner, Trosh, is a member of our family. In Laurie's name, she made a generous donation to our guild, which is supporting our lecture tonight and our workshop over the next few days. I invite Trosh to say a few words before Yvonne Stoll introduces our speaker.
Thanks, Penny. Yes, it was a little more than 2 years ago that I stood in front of a great number of you and said goodbye to the love of my life, my partner, Laurie Jensen. And in those 2 years, since that day, I have had the love and support of the family of the Spinners and Weavers Guild of the Sunshine Coast. And I'm here tonight to say thank you to all of you for everything that you've meant to me over this time, and for honoring Laurie in such a wonderful way as to bring in a wonderful, I've been looking at her work and I'm just truly amazed. This is truly wonderful. Laurie and I really devoted most of our time and energy to art and to education, and so this is just a lovely way to combine our twin passions, and a lovely way to honor Laurie. And I'm so happy for her to be a part of the 25th anniversary of the Guild, because if she were here, you know she'd be right in here helping out with all of you. So thank you all, and I hope you've enjoyed everything here and continue to enjoy all of this.
I'm going to say a few words. Tornado, Tex Ritter, cat spinning, tailspin, bubble wrap, Barbara Pole, cogs. Those words have one thing in common: J.C. Boggs. Those of you who are fortunate enough to be part of the workshop this weekend are really going to start to understand those terms and what it takes to create something like this.
Yours is going to look just like that.
So it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce J.C. Boggs to you, and by the end of this, you're all going to love her.
Use anything as a drop spindle, just tie it on there.
The 25th anniversary open house was a success, with memories of years gone by, plans for the future, and a guest fiber artist who will inspire members of this guild to a higher level of their chosen craft.
The more you learn about spinning, the better overall spinner you're going to be. And every single thing that I teach every single technique has a bigger kind of hidden spinning lesson in it. For instance, like this is coils, and to spin this, you have to spin a rhythmic thick and thin, which is very different than the thick and thin you spun when you first started spinning. Mm-hmm. And when you learn how to do this thick and thin, the lessons in it are how staple length affects the spin that you're doing, the yarn that you're spinning, how different staple lengths affect it, where twist travels in yarn while you're spinning, and why it travels there. Then when you go to the coils, you learn about even plying and differential tensioning when you ply. So every technique has something that makes you an overall better spinner, even if you don't ever want to recreate those yarns over and over again. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the more you learn about any craft, the more that you will excel in your specific field that you love. So I want you to look at, if I want this to be smooth, how perfectly smooth I can make this homespun yarn. Let's do a little bit here. And I'm not adding very much twist. I don't want to overdo it. But you're plying at these. You want to keep the finger in between there because you don't want it to tangle or ply before it gets up to you. But you want to ply inside your hand. But you're really going to close it so it's not there. And you're going to forget about the fact that that's even happening. And you're just going to ply just like you were. Pull, pinch, pull out, open, wind on. Pinch, pull out, open, wind on. You can see that it's plying.
With a solid base in traditional spinning, J.C. Boggs firmly believes that prowess in one style of spinning can only make you more adept in another. Her hand-spun yarns are snatched up faster than she can spin them and have graced the pages of many magazines. Her monthly spinning workshops are sought after and quickly filled throughout the world. In them, spinners can expect to laugh at least as much as they learn.
And it will feel weird. If you are used to spinning with a lot of uptake, when you turn your uptake down, it will feel very weird, like it's not working how it should. But you'll get used to it in a little while. Yes.
Through her DVDs, books, magazine articles, and workshops, J.C. Boggs has become an information hub in the spinning and fiber world. During the 2-day workshop, members of this guild were kept busy with instruction, humor, and inspiration. On a wet Sunshine Coast weekend, the warmth of the approaching Christmas season is coming to life in Sechelt. The Guild is presenting its Fiber Plus sale, an annual event started in 1994 at the Davis Bay Community Hall. The popularity of the Fiber Plus sale grew quickly, and in the 3rd year the Guild moved to the Rockwood Center in Sechelt. Since 2001, the November sale and show has called the Seaside Center home. Upstairs at the Seaside Center, the members presented a trunk show with displays representing treasures, traditions, and trends of the fiber world. Historical displays from the Guild's first 25 years and hands-on demonstrations which proved to be very popular with all age groups. It has been just over a year since I was invited into the world of fiber, courtesy of the Sunshine Coast Spinners and Weavers Guild. Overwhelming at first, the scope of it, the quality of the membership, reflected in a high value of the finished product. Working within standards and using the finest of materials and investing the time to create. As the Guild moves into its second quarter century, they strive for perfection, using technology new and old, from a craft of the ages, adapting to modern times.